Chapter 1. Break free from everything that clouds your mind.
Hello and welcome to the Peaceful Mind channel. We are starting a new series that aims for a meaningful change. We're excited to embark on this journey with our very first video. Thank you for joining us. Let's start. Thinking. More specifically, contemplation is the necessary first step for all kinds of change and development. The ability to think is what makes us who we are, distinguishes humans from other living beings, allows us to discover our superior qualities. However, the majority of people have never even considered what thinking truly means. What do you think is the reason for this? Let's talk about forces that prevent us from thinking and control us. I suppose you're asking, wait, are you going to talk about conspiracy theories? The answer is no. The true force that controls us is our ego. In other words, we ourselves. The being we call the ego is our sovereign ruler that forms our desires and wishes and commands our brain to act. To best understand the pure ego, we need to look at childhood periods when the mind has not yet active. Children act solely based on pleasure and desires. If you leave a candy apple in a room with a toddler, you wouldn't blame him for eating it, because children are guided by their ego and reasoning or resisting urges have not yet developed. If a situation like this is observed in adults, that person is called weak-willed. Weak-willed individuals cannot resist things that provide momentary pleasure to the brain. Willpower is one of the most distinctive features that distinguishes we humans from other living beings. The first step to being able to be strong-willed against the desires of the ego is to know that the ego is something that constantly desires and needs to be restrained. Some may ask, is taking pleasure a bad thing? Why should I restrain myself? To mention only one aspect, neuroscientific studies have shown that a pleasure-oriented life impairs brain functions. The frontal cortex, located in the upper part of our brain, is the center of basic thinking, planning, and decision-making functions. Anything that gives a person pleasure activates the brain's dopamine production center, and dopamine begins to be secreted. After the pleasure is experienced, the brain's reward mechanism kicks in due to dopamine. A person chasing pleasure constantly triggers this cycle, causing the brain to develop tolerance. In other words, the same level of pleasure is no longer enough for the person. The person constantly seeks more. Moreover, the intensity of the dopamine effect causes the basic functions in the frontal cortex to deteriorate. In short, an addiction has occurred, and the ability to think has begun to be suppressed. This information alone may be enough to convince us about keeping the ego under control. Alright, let's assume we've started using our mind filter in daily matters, aware of our ego's endless desires. Is this enough for us? No. Now it's time to focus on things that we may not have previously thought could be harmful. For example, what is the purpose of trends popularized through social media? And most importantly, what do they contribute to us? Research shows that people now spend most of their time on social media. Most of the content consumed at the top is pleasure-oriented content produced by people without any qualifications. Do they benefit us or disrupt our emotional balance by fueling greed and desires? Could consumption habits marketed through powerful pleasures also be an addiction? Let's think about the things we buy, eat, watch, or listen to in our daily lives. How many of them do you filter through the necessity and benefit criteria? These are just a few examples. the constant pleasures we chase, and the tons of unnecessary things that keep us busy prevent us from thinking. From now on, we must think more deeply about the future effects of everything we do. You might be asking, isn't it a bit difficult to show willpower against so many things? To distinguish between good and bad, necessary and unnecessary? The way to overcome difficulties is to confront them. We can only control the being called the ego by knowing it well. Then we need to deep dive and recognize Satan. The concept of Satan may seem strange and meaningless to many of us. What has been portrayed in movies, books, and stories may evoke different associations for everyone. For now, only one real piece of information about Satan concerns us. He is the greatest helper of the ego. The invisible being called Satan does not have the ability to force humans to act or interfere directly. It only tries to guide us by influencing our ego. But let's not forget that we are the ones who make the decisions. The most effective move we need to make is to gain control of our will. To summarize, the ego and Satan are the two biggest obstacles to our thinking, reasoning, and contemplation. The reason is that thinking and dedicating time to ourselves leads to the development of our inner world, self-questioning, and the ability to distinguish right from wrong through reflection. This situation contradicts the comfort of the ego and the purpose of Satan's existence, so it is not desired by either of them. So what should we do now? How do we fight a powerful enemy? Intention is the starting point of every work. First, we need to intend to fight with all our might to bring our ego under control. The next step is to know the ego, in other words, to know ourselves. We must become knowledgeable about the tricks of the ego and Satan, and we must now be watchful and consciously resist the urges that overpower our self-control and the meaningless distractions that waste our time and cloud our mind. These are the most important steps necessary for the struggle. With the knowledge and experience we will gain on this path, we will see how strong we truly are and realize that they cannot control us unless we allow it. On the journey of change, we have completed the first step by learning how to remove obstacles to thinking. See you in the next chapter. Stay peaceful.
The mind's in command, escaping the grip of the ego's demand. It whispers with hunger, disguises as need, but it's just a desire, not something to feed. Pleasure's a trap, it's rewiring our brain. Dopamine cycles that drive us insane. We scroll through the noise with minds getting dull. Addicted to pleasure, we slip and we fall. The devil's not loud, just a cunning guide, fueling the ego that we house inside, while reason and mind get pushed to the side. But freedom begins when awareness is born